going. We are started.
And where Victor's waiting to enter, he's in the waiting room.
I am letting him in.
Good. That would be good because he's one of the presenters.
Welcome, Victor.
Okay, so I guess I'll start because I know some folks have been hanging online for quite a while. The mysterious voice you hear in the background is Nancy, the president of the Western Colorado Astronomy Club. And as everybody knows, we can't have any live events right now. We were actually supposed to be at Highline Lake State Park tonight, showing people the stars through the smoke here in the valley, but we can't do that. And I might let everybody know that for the same reason, we cannot open the observatory roof, or can Victor take his equipment outside. We have black soot that has kind of gotten on everything. Our cat's white feet are now black, so yeah, it's pretty yucky out there. So we can have the equipment compromised. So I just wanted to say welcome to everybody. I know that there's a few folks from my club back east and probably some members of the public, so welcome to everybody. So this is our August event in lieu of live in-person events, and our season is kind of disappearing, so not holding out much hope for live events. But I also want to mention we do have a monthly club regular meeting, but it is also being held online, and it's I believe the date is Tuesday, the first Tuesday of the month, the coming month. And I have to confirm with Isaac, but I think we're going to have a presentation on that night, but I'll send out information to everybody. So tonight, I will briefly give some summer objects that you can check out when the smoke clears and it's safe to take your binoculars and telescopes outside. Terry will then do a virtual tour of Grand Mesa Observatory. Some of you may have seen it already, but since this is for the public, there are a lot of people that have not seen it already. Isaac's going to talk about the outreach that we do here at Grand Mesa Observatory. And one of our club members, Victor, is going to do a talk on astroimaging using CMOS. And again, we were originally going to hook in live and show you some things in the sky, but the fire has dictated otherwise. And rather than do actual live imaging, Terry is also going to have to do a simulation of sky imaging. So hopefully by next time the fire will be gone and we can do some live stuff. So a few of the objects, and again, people that are in the club will find these boring because we look at them thousands of times, but actually they're never boring. I never
Exactly, never boring.
Objects and showing them to people. So this is for people who want to drag their telescopes out and look at a few things. So the first thing, one of my very, very favorites, is the M31 Great Globular Cluster in Hercules, which is probably second only to the Omega Centauri one that we can't see. It's down in the southern horizon hemisphere. So this is our good one here, M13. You'll probably get a crimp in your neck because I think Hercules is kind of directly overhead. So yeah, it's a little hard to point your scope up that way, but it's well worth it. You never get tired of it. So M13 is also NGC 6205 and called the Great Globular Cluster in Hercules. It's really easy to find if you know where to look for it. You can't see it naked eye, but if you get a star map or something, you can get it really readily in your telescope. Or you have go-tos and you can cheat. So this globular cluster has several 100,000 stars, and it's in the constellation Hercules. And in binoculars, it looks like a little round patch of light. You can't see it with binoculars as a little fuzzy blob. And 4 inches of telescope or more will allow resolving some of the stars in M13's outer extents as small pinpoints of light, and only the larger telescopes will allow the resolution of the stars further into the center of the cluster. The best I can describe it is it looks surreal, and people often think it's a fake image in the eyepiece, but it looks like a painting on black velvet, like a splash of stars on a black velvet painting. So it's very cool. You never get tired. Now what I did here is put an image on the left side of what you might see through a moderately sized backyard telescope. And then on the right side of these images are what you would see from NASA or on the Hubble Space Telescope. So, but if you think about what you're looking and how far you're looking out into space, it's really cool to see these things, especially when you can't see them with your naked eye. So on the left there's M13, as you might see it in a decent sized telescope, 10-inch or so. And on the right side is the Hubble. You can see some different colors on the stars, depending on their temperature. There's bluer, hotter, younger stars. And there's also the gold, reddish color stars, which are the cooler, relatively speaking, stars. But you can't see this with the human eye. We only get to see white and shades of gray usually. Also, now I just want to mention in particular, the summertime is a great time to just go out and look at the Milky Way. It's hanging up overhead. If you follow it down into the teapot of Sagittarius, Jupiter and Saturn are hanging up there right now. It's a really beautiful sight, especially with those two planets there. But you really never get tired of looking at the Milky Way, especially once your eyes get adapted to the darkness. It's really, and that's a privilege. I might remind everybody listening, we take for granted, we live out here out west, and those of us who do not live in the heart of town, a lot of people never get to see the Milky Way, and I'm using the word never. So don't take it for granted. Go out as much as you can and just look up at it and soak in the wonder of it, because it's a privilege to get to see that.
Nancy, is it okay to ask questions?
Sure.
So could you go back to M13?
Sure.
And could you tell us everybody might know this already, but where is M13 located, say, in relationship to the Milky Way?
The Milky Way, well, it's in Hercules, which is not within the band of the Milky Way. And the constellation Hercules has a shape, it's called the keystone.
Sure.
And it's called the keystone. And if you look at it with the fat part of the keystone facing upwards, between the two right-hand stars that form the right side of the keystone, if you aim your telescope 2/3 of the way up between those two stars, I guarantee you'll find M13 right there.
Sure.
So you find the keystone and you go to the right-hand side of the shape, 2/3 of the way directly between those two stars, and there's M13 hanging right there. So it's really easy to find. Again, you'll get a crimp in your neck because Hercules is pretty high near the zenith now. So,
as an object, is it inside the Milky Way, or is it outside the Milky Way's? Do you know?
Now the Milky Way, if you look up in the sky, the Milky Way comes up through Cassiopeia, the W,
Sure.
and then it goes up through the Swan, the Cygnus the Swan. It kind of cuts right down at the bottom of Cygnus the Swan, and then it dumps down into Sagittarius there. So no, it's not. The Hercules constellation is not embedded in the Milky Way background.
Right. By the way, you had mentioned the privilege of being able to see the Milky Way, and we live in the eastern part of the Grand Junction, and on a dark night we can still see the Milky Way from our home. So that's nice that we, even from the town, we can see it.
It is nice, and that again, light pollution here is still light pollution, but it's nothing like back east or some of the big cities like LA or Las Vegas, where you're lucky to see any bright stars even. So it
Thanks,
is
Nancy.
But if you get out into the dark, you don't have to go far anywhere in the Grand Valley to find a dark spot. You can go up on the monument, you can go out to some of the parks, and you don't have to go far to get fairly dark skies here. So even a little bit outside of the towns like Fruta, you go 5 or 6 miles outside of Fruta and you can see a really great sky. So
Right. Great.
So I urge you to get out and look up. I don't know, I won't ask people to raise their hand because I can't see the pictures. If anybody saw the Perseids, I didn't lay out, I only saw 4 little ones, but that was my fault for not laying out there all night. But
well, Chris can share his story.
Oh, did he see a fireball? I'll be totally jealous. Chris, did you see a fireball?
Well, unfortunately for me, is probably when it just started to get going. That's when all the clouds came over.
Yeah.
And pretty much, didn't see much after that. I was out all night in the driveway, laying on
Oh.
the cot.
Oh, I'll tell a quick story too, because that sky that night reminded me of this. When I lived back east, we had a business conference at a famous kind of resort, old resort, New York State resort. And I came back from dinner to find out that Bob Berman, the columnist from Astronomy Magazine, like my favorite writer in Astronomy Magazine, was there giving a talk. And it was the night of the Perseids. So all the people at the talk schlepped out into the field behind Bob Berman. And he spent 3 hours talking about trivia because not one Perseid meteor streaked across the sky. So I felt bad. Bob was kind of on the spot. You know, the meteors didn't show up till around 2 a.m., but he entertained the crowd anyway with astronomical facts. And it was fun to meet him. So yeah, so don't feel bad.
Actually, this is Robert. I actually saw one bright meteor the next evening, skirting across the north. And I couldn't say whether or not it was a fireball, but it was pretty close. But yeah, the whole night.
My sister saw that one too.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And other than that, I only saw 2 meteors the night of then when it was supposed to really happen. So I'm wondering, does anybody know of any reports of whether it turned out to be a good shower for anybody?
I didn't see the reports, sorry to say.
Yeah.
I could chime in on what I saw. I observed for about an hour and a half under about 50 to 70% overcast on the morning of maximum, and I saw 19.
Oh, okay. For how many hours?
Hour and a half.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah, considering the overcast, and there was a pretty fat crescent moon too, which eliminated the fainter ones, but the clouds eliminated a lot.
Well, like, the Murphy's Law, like the really good showers happen in the dead of winter when it's 5 degrees out. So
right.
That's just the average rule probably. So I'll get back to our summer stuff here. Again, the Milky Way region, if you have binoculars or a telescope and you even just scan around, you can see so many cool things. And there's the background stars. It's such a rich star field. So it's fun to just look around and then say, oh, what is that thing I'm looking at? And then go kind of look it up and try to figure out what it is. But one of the popular things there is Messier number 8, M8, which is the Lagoon Nebula, which is in Sagittarius. And that one, yes, is embedded in the Milky Way star field. So again, it's a giant interstellar cloud in the constellation Sagittarius, and it's classified as an emission nebula. And it's in a hydrogen region. You can take really great photos of it with hydrogen alpha filters, of course. And it was discovered way back in 1654. And it's only one of 2 star-forming nebula faintly visible to the eye from mid-northern latitudes. And my guess, without looking it up, is the Orion Nebula is probably the other one. So if you look at with binoculars or a small to medium-sized telescope, it appears as a distinct oval cloud-like patch with a definite core. And within the nebula is fun because there is also an open star cluster, which you'll see on the subsequent photos here. So again, the photo on the left is what appears to be a larger backyard telescope because you can see some dark dust lanes. And so I'm guessing it's a 16-inch or bigger. But it's the little, again, white-colored, human eye can't see the cool stuff, fuzzy thing. And you can see the bright core there. And on the right-hand side, you can also see the star cluster up in about the 1 o'clock position. And on the right side is the Hubble, taken with the hydrogen light. And you can see the emission color, the red color, which is signature of hydrogen emitting nebulae. And you can see that really pretty star cluster. To me, this is like a bonus. It's like 2 for the price of 1. So you get to see 2 cool things at one time. So the lagoon, again, in Sagittarius, fun to look for that one. And don't get too bored. Again, you guys don't get bored of this stuff. But everybody, has to see M31, our neighbor Andromeda Galaxy. And it's Messier 31. It's a barred spiral, approximately 2.5 million light years from Earth. And it's the nearest major galaxy to the Milky Way. It's within our local, what they call the local galaxy cluster. And there's a few others, but Andromeda and the Milky Way are the 2 big players. And Andromeda, if you're in a dark spot, is among the brightest of the Messier objects, so you can actually see it. You have to know where to look and may need to use a little bit of averted vision, but it is visible to the naked eye from Earth on a dark night. Even if you have a little bit of moderate light pollution, if you know where to look, you know, you get a map of the constellation Andromeda, and it's pretty easy to pick out if you know where it is. And the two big guys are going to get even bigger because our Milky Way and the Andromeda galaxies are going to collide in about 4.5 billion years and merge to form one big giant elliptical galaxy, or a large lenticular galaxy. Now, for those of you who don't know, elliptical galaxies are kind of like big, fuzzy looking footballs. So the beautiful structure of the Milky Way and Andromeda, if you're going to get your astro photos of Andromeda, you better do it in the next 4.5 billion years. Otherwise, it's not going to look so great on film because it'll be a big elliptical, fuzzy football. So again, on the left, the Andromeda Galaxy spans a pretty big field in a telescope, but the brighter core is visible, and then depending on your scope or your eyes, you can see the outer, fainter part of it. And on the right side is one of the classic, Terry takes a lot of beautiful images. This isn't one of his, I didn't have time to grab one of his, but he's got photos that look just like this that were taken here at Grand Mesa Observatory. That's the kind of work that is done here. So, you know, the world-class astrophotography. So his images look exactly like the one on the right, only he'll probably say they'd be better, right? Right, I've got to put in that plug, right? So there's Andromeda and some of its little satellite galaxies down. There's one down below it. So you can see a few of the smaller neighbors as well that Andromeda has probably been gobbling up over the past number of billions of years. This one is kind of cool, and I got a thrill the first time I saw this. It was at a star party up in Upper New Jersey, and I used to observe with one of my buddies in the club. And from here, I think it should be called the Upside Down Swan Nebula. And when you see it, it might be the swan fishing underwater for a fish because it's upside down. But in any way, it's also known as the Omega Nebula, Checkmark Nebula, and the Horseshoe Nebula. Again, it's a hydrogen 2 region in Sagittarius. Messier cataloged it in 1764. It was discovered before that, but he cataloged it then. And it's located, again, in those rich star fields of the Sagittarius area of the Milky Way. So that one is very interesting. Now, to me, the photo on the left is the, average telescope photo. And you can see the swan, his bottom is facing up and his head's sticking down. But to me, once you go to the Hubble shot, I don't see a swan at all. I think, it looks more like a brain or something. So if you really want to see the swan, I think you're better off with your backyard telescope. This is the one time I think the backyard telescope clearly has an advantage because then you can see the swan. And this is also M17, Messier 17. There's not a lot of exciting sky events, depending on how you define exciting. But Jupiter and Saturn are clearly visible up right outside and to the left of, I'll show you the chart, but of the teapot asterism in Sagittarius. And you never get tired of looking at them. Saturn rings Jupiter with all the moons orbiting around. Mars, you have to get up early in the morning or stay up really late. I think I was out at 4 a.m. the other night and I saw Mars and Venus coming up. And Mars is approaching opposition, so it's getting brighter. And it's going to get so bright probably sometime in October. I don't know the exact opposition date. But in between September 29th and October 28th, it will actually take over Jupiter's spot as the second brightest planet and become the third brightest object in the sky next to the moon and Venus. So Jupiter's not going to be the king of brightness for a little while Mars is, and I'm assuming it'll be a good time to try to find some detail if you're viewing Mars. Usually it's just a fuzzy little orange dot. And when it's at opposition, you can probably get some more detail on there if you're looking at it. September 11th, Neptune is at opposition, and this is one of the blue ice giant planets, and it'll be at its closest approach to Earth. and its face will be fully illuminated by the sun. So it will now be brighter than at any other time of the year and will be visible all night long. And this is the best time to view and photograph Neptune. But due to its extreme distance from Earth, it still only appears as a tiny blue dot in all but the biggest telescopes. So don't expect to see detail like you see with Jupiter or Saturn, but it's still cool to say, hey, I'm looking at Neptune, and a lot goes on there. There's like 1,500-mile-an-hour winds there, and it's a pretty cool place, literally. So check out Neptune. On Saturday, August 22nd, there is a rare double shadow transit on Jupiter. As you know, the 4 Galilean moons put on quite a show and a dance going behind the planet and in front of the planet. And when they pass in front of the planet, they cast their shadow, a small black dot, onto the planet. So during the wee hours of Saturday, August 22nd, which is tomorrow, I might say, and you know, I'm not sure if actually that means that it's late tonight or if it's tomorrow night. The way they worded it. But at any rate, if you're interested, check it out online in case it's tonight. So in the western part of North America, you can witness the rare double shadow transit, and it's Ganymede and I say Io, some people say Io, but Io, at 12:32 a.m. Mountain Daylight. So it might actually be tonight then at 12:32 a.m. Ganymede's large shadow will join Io's already transiting smaller shadow, and they will cross Jupiter together for nearly 2 hours until Io's shadow moves off Jupiter at 2:15 Mountain Daylight Time. So my guess is that might be tonight. Bummer, there's smoke. So here's a view through a moderate telescope of Jupiter and the larger Galilean moons. And they're always in different positions around Jupiter, so it's interesting to watch their dance around the planet. And on the right is just a picture of the teapot asterism in Sagittarius, and you can see Jupiter's to the left of it, and Saturn is fainter, more to the left of Jupiter. You'll know which one is which. Jupiter is much brighter than Saturn. So you can see all this cool stuff through the backyard telescope. And Saturn, of course, is in a good position with its rings to see nice detail, and try to look for the Cassini gap and some other detail. And now Saturn has also overtaken Jupiter as the planet with the most moons. They recently discovered 12 new moons orbiting it. So now the total's up to about 82, and Jupiter has about 79. So our poor one moon Earth, but ours is pretty big, so I guess that's okay. But at any rate, you got to check out Saturn. That's the thing that gets most people hooked on astronomy, looking at that. So for those of you who have kids, make sure you let them see Saturn through your telescope, and they might become astronomers in the future, or at least astronomy club members. So here's some website information on Grand Mesa Observatory. Pretty easy to remember, grandmesaobservatory.com. And Western Colorado Astronomy Club. If you want to jot those down or whatever, just look them up, Google them. We're pretty much, yeah, if you Google astronomy clubs here in this area, you'll find us and Black Canyon Astronomical Society. Depending on what you live closer to, or if you really want to be into astronomy, you join both clubs and do stuff. BCAS has the canyon down there, which is a dark sky site. So it's awesome to observe with the folks from Black Canyon Club. So they have a nice dark location there. So I think that's pretty much my little spiel here. I just wanted to share a few things to look for under the summer skies when you don't have a full moon or smoke or clouds, which, you know, happens once in a while. So at any rate, I am going to stop sharing this screen.
Nancy, I have a question for you.
Sure.
About what size telescope would you need to see Jupiter? I mean, Jupiter, sorry, Neptune.
That I don't want to give you wrong information. I don't know. I think it might be an 8-inch or a 10 to get a, might be, I don't know. Art, do you happen to know that by any chance?
Well, yeah, I think an 8 will show a disc for sure. Yeah, you know, you can see it in binoculars, but it's just star-like.
Okay.
So maybe you know, an 8, I'd say. Maybe a 6, but I'm a little unsure of that.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
So Brian's in the waiting room if somebody wants to let him in.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks.
And I'm trying to figure out how to pass this over to Terry here. Okay. Share screen. Let's look. Participants. Hang on one second. I am going to find Terry, and I am going to turn this over and make him, well, it doesn't give me the option of allowing him to be the host.
Let me take a look at it.
Robert, are you the host? Maybe you need to turn it
Yeah,
over.
I'm going to check it out here.
Yeah, because I don't have the option.
Terry, right? Okay, Terry, it's coming your way.
Can he hear us?
Everybody,
He's muting. All right, so you're ready to go, Terry? I'm going to click mute here and
okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Nice to see everyone here tonight. Welcome, if you're here for the first time. I see some good friends from out of state. Carlos, welcome, and Dave from Michigan. Nice to see you, buddy. You got a big moustache there now. What's that all about? Well, anyhow, tonight I'm going to, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yep.
Okay. Here's a photo of the complex Grand Mesa Observatory on not such a smoky day. I just got back from the other side of town about 45 minutes ago to get some medicines, and boy, over by Fruta, which is about 10 miles away from the Spring Gulch fire, and you can't even see the book cliffs. It's pretty nasty over there, and it's not much better over here. It's very smoky, so until this fire subsides, we are not going to be opening the roof. And I just want to tell you a little bit about how Grand Mesa Observatory started. And in 2016, one of my clients, one of my students, I was teaching astrophotography, gentleman by the name of John Manser, who's the founder of Grand Mesa Observatory, John and Vicky Manser. John mentioned to me one day that he has property in Colorado and he would love to build an observatory there because he says on some nights the Milky Way is so bright that it casts a shadow. And I've only seen that a couple of times in my life, and that was when I used to live in Australia in the outback. I've seen that, and it's quite remarkable. And and John said that the only problem is that he doesn't have anybody to run it. So I didn't have to think twice about it. I volunteered. I said, hey, I'm your man. So a couple of weeks later, John had the plans drawn up. He flew me down here. We picked out the spot, and roughly 4 months later, I moved down here. And initially, the idea was just to have several piers available in the roll-off roof, which is the building in the middle, to be available for remote use, for astrophotography, for any images around the world. There's a lot of images that live in light polluted areas that don't have access to the beautiful conditions that we have normally. We had only been operating for a few months when John decided that he wanted to get into public outreach. So we started doing public events, and we got involved with the Western Colorado Astronomy Club, which is where I met Nancy, who was talking just before. Nancy is my fiance, and Nancy does, not only is she president of the Western Colorado Astronomy Club, but she also does all of the public outreach for us, as well as PR for the observatory. So she really does a great job. And we also have the dome that you see in the distance there is one of the Falcon telescopes, which is owned by the Air Force Academy out of Colorado Springs. They have 12 of these telescopes around the world, and this one is a collaboration between the Air Force Academy and the Colorado Mesa University. I'm going to talk to you more about that and what's in it in a little bit, and I'll show you a video. And we also have our science dome here, which isn't quite finished yet. We had to put a hold on that during the start of the coronavirus. I need some people to come up and help me finish the slot. We're having some electronic problems, and hopefully we will get that resolved soon. Okay, moving forward, I'm going to show you now, where are we? Just bear with me for a second. Can everybody see the screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Video files.
Yep, a video file. Yep, that's it. Now, what we're looking at here is the...
We don't actually see the movie yet, Terry.
Okay, it should have stopped. Can you see a graph on the screen?
No, we see all the icons of your files.
Oh, hang on a second. Where's it gone? Oh, here it is. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Yes.
Okay. This is the beginning of the video I'm going to show you for a bit of a tour around the inside of the observatory. First, I just want to show you the software that we use to control the sky roof. It's a 16 by 32 foot roll-off roof, and this is the software that controls it. Usually, if the weather is good, the sky roof will automatically open up the roof about an hour before sunset or before darkness, and it will close just before daylight. And if it's cloudy, we have a weather station on there which will automatically close the roof. So just moving now into the observatory, and right there in front of us we have one of the scopes that we are testing. This is a 6-inch refractor made by William Optics, the 156 APO. Tremendous scope, and we are using that with a QHY 367 one-shot color camera. By the way, we are Grand Mesa Observatory is a testing station for QHY, and which is great because we get to test some of their really great cameras, and the QHY 367 has really given us some good results. on each of the mounts, we've got 5 mounts inside the observatory that we use, and the 6th mount, or the 6th sphere, is actually leased out to a company that uses it for satellite tracking. On each of the telescopes, we have a mini computer manufactured by Shuttle, and this is what we are using to remote control the telescopes. These can be connected. You can connect to these. Anybody can connect to these if they want to hire a telescope. This one is another telescope that we are testing, and this camera, this particular camera, is the new QHY 600 60 megapixel full frame monochrome CMOS, and it really is taking the market by storm. Over here we have a 12.5-inch plane wave, and again on here you see we're also using the same camera, which is a QHY 600 monochrome again, and we have a little red cat, William Optics red cat, that we are testing for them, coupled to a QHY 16200 monochrome CCD. One of the latest chips that was made by Kodak before or while CMOS was becoming very popular. All of the telescope mounts that we use in the observatory, except for the one that's hired, are made by Paramount, a software BISC, Colorado-based company out of Golden. This one is their latest model. The one with the plane wave is Paramount ME2. This one here has got the Paramount ME Takahashi 130 FSQ, and at the moment, or when let me just go back. At the moment, as you see on here, this one has got a QHY 367 one-shot color camera on it, but we've just put one of the QHY 600 monochrome CCDs on there, and just recently posted an image of the Veil Nebula, which is first light, and so far I'm very impressed with the camera. It's great.
Terry,
Yes.
this is Brian. What model camera was that? A QHY?
On this one, the one that you see is a QHY 367. It's a full frame one-shot color camera, and it has 4.88 pixels and 36 megapixel. And yeah, I've been using that 367 on the Takahashi 130 for about 3 years, and really got some amazing results with it, both in color and also in narrowband. On here, as you can see, it's got a filter wheel, which a lot of people don't use, but we've got several one-shot color cameras in the observatory that we're using for narrowband imaging, and they work out very well. Okay, so this little white box here is actually controlling all of the 12-volt equipment, such as your focuser, camera, etc. And it's called a Mount Hub Pro. And the Mount Hub Pro allows us to turn on all of the 12-volt equipment remotely. Because the idea, of course, with all of this equipment is that any of the telescopes can be connected remotely. So I'm going to move to the next telescope, which is Twin Takahashi E180s. I brought one of these with me from Michigan when I moved here on this ancient Paramount GT 1100S, which I think was made around about 1990. I bought it used from a buddy of mine in Ohio, a gentleman by the name of Cliff Swan. Some of you may have heard me talking about him. Cliff, he's got a later model Paramount, and he gave this one to me, and I upgraded it to the Paramount ME electronics. And it's just amazing that a mount that's, you know, nearly 30 years old can be upgraded to the latest electronics. But got on here at the moment Twin Takahashi E180s, 8.5 inch Newtonian reflector style with a built-in corrector that gives it a very fast f2.8 focal ratio. On the lower one, at the moment, I've got a new camera called the QHY410. This one that you see here is no longer in use. I'm just going to take you outside now for a view from above the observatory. This is where the roll-off roof goes out to. And I think I've got a view of the motor. This is the motor that controls the roof, can carry up to 4,000 pounds. We had the whole lot designed by Interactive Astronomy, based out of California. Any of you interested in wanting to do a roll-off roof, he's the man to talk to when it comes to roll-off roof, sky roof design. Here's a view from looking down into the observatory. We've got a couple of Dobsonians there that we set up when we have public events. On top of the office or the warm room, you can see we have an all-sky camera, which has actually just been replaced by a Meteor camera, which is basically doing the same thing, by the Boulder University. They're going to be using it for collecting data for meteors. And they're also going to allow us to share the data on their website once they've got it, their software up and running. There's also a view of Grand Mesa, which is the largest flat top mountain in the world. When I looked up here tonight, just driving home, I could hardly see the hills. That's how smoky it was. It's really, really bad. These white panels you see on the wall, just going to go back a little bit. These white panels here, these are all LED panels, flat panels that we use for making flat, what we call flat frames when we're taking pictures. Basically what happens is when we're taking a picture frame or a light frame, 90% of the time we're going to get some what we call dust motes on there. And the dust motes appear kind of grayish on a black background. a round circular piece of dust. And to get rid of the dust, what we do is we take a picture of the flat frame, and it actually makes an image of the same dust mote in the same position, except that the dust mote is dark against a white background. So what you do is we just combine the flat frames with the picture frames, and it cancels out the dust. Okay, so I'm finished with this one, and I'm just going to show you now just an overview of hang on, where am I? Screen share. Okay, can everybody still see this screen? Maybe not.
We're still seeing your.
Can you see now?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Just
Okay. Here is a bit of an overview from the western end of the complex, looking at the roll-off roof observatory and the house where Nancy and I live, and the science dome. And Grand Mesa Observatory is at an elevation of just over 6,000 feet. I'm just going to stop this, and I'm going to show you a okay. Okay, can everyone see the screen now? We're now looking down into the Falcon telescope dome.
Yes.
Can everyone see that?
Yeah, I see.
Okay, this is the one of the 12 of the Falcon telescopes, and this one has a 20-inch Italian scope in it, mounted on a Paramount ME2, the same as what we have in the roll-off roof for the plane wave. And this particular telescope is being used by the Air Force and the Colorado Mesa University, along with a science team that we have working out of New York City University. And they're using this telescope for exoplanet research, as well as photometry and any other science project that students come up with. All right, so that's about it for now. Do I have any questions so far? Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be passing the show over to Isaac Garfinkel, who's the assistant director for Grand Mesa Observatory. He lives right next door to me on Percy Mesa Road. Isaac is also just taken on a position with Stellar View Telescopes based out of California. And if you ever need to speak to anyone at Stellar View, you'll probably talk to Isaac.
You're talking to him.
Huh?
I said, if you're talking to somebody at Stellar View, you're probably talking to him right now.
Yep. And it's Isaac's birthday on the weekend, so happy birthday, Isaac.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to make you the host, Isaac, and you can take over.
All right, and welcome Ken to the show. So let me see here. I'm gonna pull up the nonprofit screen. There we go. All right, can you guys see the webpage I'm on right now?
No, can't see it.
Oop. There we go.
There we go.
How about now?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. So we are, when the world is operating more normally, you know, our chief goal is really to get the public interested in astronomy. And in particular, our mission is really focused around the Western Slope and growing out from there just to increase sort of national STEM awareness. We are still able to do a lot of this for, you know, places that are operating remotely because we operate remotely. So, you know, any schools that are interested in doing research, and we are still trying to maintain our ties with a couple of schools in New York and in Denver. That dome that Terry was just showing us, that's really our, you know, being used as sort of a flagship research scope at the moment, along with a 12.5-inch plane wave that we have inside. But we really, you know, we do a lot of imaging for the public, and we do, you know, you can subscribe and get our data, but our sort of passion behind all of this, what we want to fund with that money, is this improved STEM awareness. So you can scroll through here on our website under grandmesaobservatory.com and see sort of what we stand for, what we hope to do. And obviously a lot of that has been sort of put on hold thanks to, you know, COVID and everything that's going on. But if anybody does, you know, have an interest in volunteering time or money, both are greatly appreciated. You can do so over here under the volunteering tab. Whatever you're sort of interested in doing, again, a lot of this will pick back up if and when we're able to start having public events again. So we need people to help usher cars, we need people to help run tables, to watch donation box, to monitor scopes. You know, we really have a lot of things to do in a normally functioning observatory. But anyone that, you know, wants to help with outreach or social media, or if anybody knows any schools or universities that might be looking to do some kind of remote learning with us, definitely have them reach out. Likewise, on our donations page, we do, you know, you're welcome to make recurring donations. We have a Patreon for that, which I'm building up.
Isaac,
Yes.
we see your outmail, your email box, not the web page.
How about that?
That's good.
I thought I was sharing the screen itself, not the page there. Sorry about that. So yeah, this is I was on the volunteering page before. So if you guys ever want to sign up for anything, just fill this out. It'll go right to Terry or myself. That's on our website under the nonprofit tab. And for donations and fundraising, yeah, I did. So I put the Patreon on here. It's not really fleshed out yet. We're hoping to fill that out more. But anybody that wants to help, you know, keep us open, it has been a little rough not being able to solicit our usual crowds and our usual donations here. And any support you're willing to give is very much appreciated. We are looking to build, like I said, more of a relationship with the academic community, since that's really going to be most of the outreach we can do right now. So again, if anybody knows schools or universities that are interested, have them check out what we're able to offer, and send them over, and hopefully we can work out some kind of program with them. Bea, does anybody have questions about the nonprofit wing of what we do, or any outreach opportunities? I will take that as a no. I also have a 3.5-month-old baby, so I'm probably going to go get back to him. But I will send this over to Victor.
Now, Isaac, is it really necessary to make me host? Can I just share my screen?
I don't think you're able to share the screen unless you're the host.
Okay.
I think that is a qualification. So where'd you go, Victor? Here you are.
Can I just butt in for a second?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a question from Mason Woodson. Mason, I think you're still here, and hopefully you can hear me. And you have a question there. How does one obtain access to one of the telescopes? Well, first of all, you know, if you are...
Just put a link in there.
Yeah, Isaac's just put a link in there for you to have a look at. In there, you can take a look at that, the equipment that we have, and how our subscription works.
That's the next link I just sent both. They're one below each other on the page itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's written out in full.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Isaac. So yeah, hopefully that will take care of your question. And
for those who are not looking to read long paragraphs on our website, basically everything we do is subscription based. So we have monthly subscriptions for all of our systems. Whoever is subscribed to a system votes on the targets that we are imaging that month. So we send out a poll at the beginning of the month, and the most voted on objects, it's 2 objects per system. The most voted on objects are what we end up imaging. That data is then made available with all our calibration frames, and you can download it and process everything yourself. We do have some variations on these plans. We have, you know, the all access plan where you get access to all of our scopes and our legacy data. You can request old data that we've done. You can request custom data sets. We don't have the facilities or really the time yet to be training individuals on how to use the scopes themselves. So it's all still done by operators here on our end. All right, Victor, you are host, so you're up whenever.
Okay, I'm pushing sharing my screen now. So what is this? So desktop, whiteboard, iPhone, iPad. So I want desktop, okay. So share, and let me pull this up. Okay, do you guys see that keynote page where it says live view? What the heck is that? Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay,
Yep,
I'm
can see
gonna
it.
play and see if that works. Okay. So what I've been asked to do tonight was to actually do some live view. And I had my equipment out this morning just to check and see if I could get the live view. And with my reflector, I've got an 8-inch reflector with an f4.9 from Orion. And while I was doing that, of course, it was really smoky. And I was getting particulate matter on my computer and all of the other equipment. So I kind of thought that maybe it wouldn't be a good idea and wouldn't be very useful to try to get live view tonight. So instead, I just thought I'd just do a real short presentation on what is live view. And as I thought about what live view is that I was thinking, well, you know, what it is, you know, is it just a photograph? Is it a video? Is it what I can see through a DSRL? And I kind of came to the conclusion, and some of you may disagree with that it's kind of all relative to how the human eye actually functions. Because the human eye is kind of a mirrorless video camera, really, to some extent. And so kind of what the outline is, you know, what is live view? And you know, we'll try to talk to that in reference to the eye itself, and cameras and software that kind of support live view. And then why do we even need live view? What does it tell us that might be helpful? So what is live view? And I'm assuming all you guys can see this, my screen. Okay, so and it seems like it's easiest to describe it in comparison to the human eye, because when we say live view, is we're actually making reference to an anthropomorphic definition. Live view is what I see or what you see. So when we look at an object with our eyes, that is the ultimate live view. So what is really going on? Well, light falls on our pupil, and then it passes through a organic lens that is kind of flexible, that is connected to two muscles in the eye. And so what's really cool about that is that you can actually change the focal length a little bit. And so that's why you all know the formula of how to calculate the focal length. It's the reciprocal of the focal length is equal to the reciprocal of the distance from the lens to the focal plane minus the distance of the true object. And most of the time when we talk about focal length, what we're really talking about is when the object we're looking at is essentially at infinity, which means the reciprocal is essentially 0. But it can change if it's less than the focal length. So what the lens does when we're looking at things that are at infinity is the focal length of the lens of our eye is approximately plus or minus 24 millimeters. So, so what happens is the focal image, approximately 24 millimeters from the lens itself, falls on the let me see if I can get to falls essentially on the rods and cones. And, you know, we could go into the rods and cones, but basically they are chemical receptors that send the image to the brain, specifically the occipital lobe. And there it's processed to what we see. So when we look at the moon or when we look at the stars at night, it's essentially a 24 millimeter lens that's processing it. Our brain acts as the software, the image processor to see the object. So what's the functional exposure of our eyes? Well, the functional exposure of our eyes is about 1/15 to 1/200th of a second. And as you know, for those of you who use cameras, DSLRs, Canon, Nikons, etc., you know, you can change the focal length on that, or rather the exposure, I'm sorry. So you can exchange the exposure, but if you want to mimic the eye, it's got to be somewhere between 1/15 of a second and 1/200th of a second. And interestingly enough is that the exposure, the functional exposure, is probably wavelength dependent, because the eye can actually have longer exposures, more time towards the 1/15 of a second with red light. That's why when you look at a red star at night, if you concentrate on that, it'll actually get a little bit brighter because it has a little bit longer exposure time as opposed to some of the other frequencies. But the eye has to refresh itself. So it's a chemical receptor, so it has to refresh itself. And that takes a finite amount of time, but fortunately it does it very fast. As a matter of fact, it can refresh itself 10 to 12 times per second, and we can still see still images. But the eye can also do video recordings, as it were. And it functions up to 24 to 48 frames per second. So thus, most cameras do 30 frames per second. That's kind of right in the middle of the spectrum of what the eye actually sees. So when we talk about live view, we are talking about in reference to the eye. So essentially what live view is, and some people call it live preview, but it's really kind of the same thing, and you can kind of split hairs a little bit about what that actually means, is that we use electronics to reproduce what the eye can do. Now, the advantage of that, we'll talk about this a little bit later, is that we can still reproduce the exposure time and focal length of the eye and the frames per second, but we can kind of fudge a little bit with gain and ISO, where we can actually see more still using the same time frame as in the eye. So that's kind of a little bit of advantage. But here, basically to do live view, and I guess my cursor, can you see my cursor at all? Let me see if you can see it. Nope, I can't see it. But basically is what we need is we need electronic hardware and computer software in order to reproduce what the eye can do. And so what you do for astrophotography is you have a telescope, which takes the place of the lens of the eye. And then you have a camera, which can be a DSLR or a dedicated astrophotography camera, or you can even use your iPhone or smartphone that functions as the rods and cones. Now, the optic nerves, of course, in our eye are replaced by cables. And usually the cables that we use are USB 3 cables. I know the USB 3 cables are those cables that are kind of like USB 2s or 3s, but they have a little bump on top that fits into a slot. So, the telescope is all you need is a lens. It can be a cheap telescope or it can be a very expensive telescope. It can be a small telescope or it'll be a big telescope. And you can go into the advantages of having one over the other. And it can be a reflector, it can be a refractor, it can be an SCT, it can be a Ritchie-Crichton. It just needs to be a lens to gather the light, to gather the photons. Then you've got to have a device that captures those photons, and that's what we call a camera. And the camera, like the DSLR, the Nikons, the Canons, the Sonys, their high-end cameras can do what we are calling live view. The more inexpensive entry-level cameras often don't have a live view that you can transfer to a computer. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, mirrorless cameras, because of their nature, all have live view. They just all have to have live view. Most dedicated astrophotography cameras have live views, like what Terry was talking about. The QHY cameras can have live view. But in order to, and the optic nerves, of course, the USB cables or the USB 3s. I should have taken a picture of that, but I didn't, but I suspect most of you know what that is anyways. Now, so we've got the device to capture the light. We've got the device to transmit the light, the optic nerves, in this case is a USB 3 cable. Now we need a brain to process that, and the brain that we use is our software. Now, there's lots of software out there that can kind of do live view or fudges live view, but SharpCap is probably the easiest to use. And many of you are probably familiar with that SharpCap. And I actually, okay, now we can kind of go, into the formal definition of what is live view or live preview. It is really the software that makes a photograph into what we call live view, that kind of does all the work that our brain does, that turns it into a mimic of live view. So the formal definition of live view or preview, and this is taken from Wikipedia, is a feature that allows a digital camera display, and in this case we're talking about CMOS primarily, to be used as a viewfinder. This provides a means of preventing framing and other exposures before taking the actual photograph. Usually, you know, we have to take the picture, and then we have to develop it, and then we have to process it. You know, that all takes time. And so by the time we look at the picture, it could be literally hours. So it's not real time. So let me just see you just a second here. You're blocking it. In most such cameras, the preview or the live view is generated by means of continuously and directly projecting the image formed by the lens, i.e. telescope, onto the main image sensor, which in turn feeds it to the electronic screen, your computer, or it could be an actual digital screen on your camera with the live preview image. Now, so really what turns it into a live view is or at least the way that I think, is the exposure, the refreshing time, and the software that actually manipulates the data. So to give you an example, if you are all hooked up in the previous, in the previous example here with your telescope and your camera, and you're hooked up and you have a USB 3 cable hooked to your computer, which you're using as your digital screen, what you can do now with the software is you can manipulate it and say, I want it to only expose for 1/100th of a second or 1/15th of a second. So that kind of mimics the eye. And then I want to do so many frames per second. So if you do that, then the image that you get is going to be pretty much what the eye would see if it actually looked through the eyepiece in the telescope. Now, why is this even necessary? I mean, the eye is a great camera and the brain is a great image processor. Why do we need to do something electronic? Well, there's a couple of advantages. One is that in the case of DSLR, you can change the ISO. You can have the same exposure, same focal length, but you can change the ISO, say, from 200 to 1600 or 3200. So with those settings, which would be the same settings as your normal eye, you can see a heck of a lot more, so that you can actually gather more data. Now, in the case of gain, it's not exactly transferable to the ISO. It's more about filling up the wells in your image processor, and your ADUs are using higher numbers. So, but it does, in effect, look like it's brighter and that you're seeing more things. It's also much easier to focus in real time, so that all of you astrophotographers out there know what a pain in the neck it is to try to focus something if you don't have the right equipment. I mean, you can spend out there for an hour or more just trying to focus things. The other thing which I think is great and is part of GMO's mission is, instead of having a telescope out on the tarmac and having these long lines of people come through and look at Saturn, is you can do exactly the same thing with live view by doing the right setting. So you can reach a lot more people in a given amount of time. So I think live view is really great, and you know, it took us a long time to try to figure out something that is as good as, or in some cases now better than, the human eye itself. So that's all I got.
Very good. Thank you very much for that
Yeah.
explanation.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Have you been using this at outreach events?
You know, the short answer is no. The long answer is that the more I look into it, is that I think the greater the possibility for outreach. And I tell you one thing that really impressed me is years and years ago is the first time I came to an event by the Western Colorado Astronomy Club. It was on the Mesa, or I'm sorry, it was on the monument. And there was this gentleman out there who had this big computer screen, and he was looking at M31, the Andromeda Galaxy. And instead of having long lines of people look at it, he had this on this computer screen, which was just awesome. So I was just really impressed with that. So I think there is a real possibility here for education with live view. And, you know, I think that that's something to be explored.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. So now, how do I change back? Do I go to participants? And I'm supposed to...
Yeah, Victor, if you go to the, if you go to the top right-hand corner of your screen,
yeah.
Sorry, of my screen, you can make me the host.
Okay, so the top right-hand corner of your screen. So I'm looking at you, and I've got a gallery view. No, that's not it. Enter full screen. Okay, so let's see. You are using, I know.
You can see my photo in the top right-hand corner. You see three little dots, and if you hit those three little dots, it should say make Terry the host.
You know, in the top right-hand corner, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing three little dots.
You're not?
No.
Okay.
Put your cursor on his frame.
Okay. Okay, right there. Got it. Okay. Mute pin, make host. Okay, you're there.
Okay. Thank you, Victor. Great presentation. Yeah, so under normal circumstances, and this is far from normal circumstances, we've been hit by several fronts, not only with the pandemic, but now a double whammy with the fire. So we're not even able to open up the roof and show the beautiful views that we get of the night skies here. So what I'm going to try and do is to show you exactly what I do when I set up a telescope for imaging, and show you a few pictures that that I've downloaded from the telescope while I'm imaging. So I'm just going to try and share the screen. Where am I? System 1. Okay. Can everyone see the planetarium view?
Yes, I can see.
Okay. All right. So what you're actually looking at here is on one of the mini computers that we've got on one of the telescopes, one of the shuttles, which has got, this one has Windows 10 on it, but most of the others have got Windows 7. Because we have a Paramount equatorial mount, we have to use what's called the SkyX, which is not only a planetarium program, but it operates the telescope mount. I can use it for capturing images with the camera. I can use it for polar alignment, all types of good stuff. And I can also use it to focus with the focuser. So when I use AnyDesk to control the telescopes. AnyDesk is a remote access software, a bit like TeamViewer. If any of you use TeamViewer, it's much the same. Essentially, it's a remote desktop software. And the first thing that I do when I open up one of the telescopes is I go here to this little piece of software, which is the Mount Hub Pro, which operates all of the 12-volt hardware. And I have to turn this on. So I go here to connect, and then I go to all on, and then the camera should be connected. I can check if I go inside here to Device Manager, and there it is. I'm on this particular setup. As I showed in the video, I'm using the new QHY 600 60 megapixel monochrome camera. It really is a terrific camera. So once I've got the 12-volt hardware set up, I can go to Maxim, which is the software that I use for capturing. And I go up here to camera control, and I'll just check the settings that I have in the camera. Go to properties, just check the settings in here are good. And then I'll just check the filter wheel, make sure that that's all connected. Yeah, all looks good. And we have another camera in here, which is our guide camera. And I'm using a Starlight Express Lodestar. And then I'll just hit connect. And once the camera is connected, I will normally turn on the cooling device, but I'm not going to turn the cooling on because it's just so damn hot at the moment. It's about, I think it's probably over 80 degrees at the moment in the observatory. But normally I have the cooling when it's around about 75 to 80 degrees. I have it set to minus 10 degrees Celsius. The camera is capable of an ambient temperature of about minus 35 to minus, minus 30 to minus 35 degrees ambient, which means that, and that's in Celsius, which means that if it's 25 degrees Celsius outside, ambient, I can cool down to, minus 10, minus 5, minus 10 degrees. And on this particular camera, it works, the cooling works very well. So once I've done that, I go to the Expose tab, and I will set up a sequence of what I wanted to take pictures of. In this particular case, it was set on NGC 6992, which is part of the Veil Nebula. And so I set it up in there. And I'll then go to the SkyX, and I will go to the telescope tab, and I will put in the name of the object that I want to take pictures of. And I'll hit the find button, then I'll slew it. Slewing means moving the telescope mount to the object, in this particular case, the Veil Nebula. And if I'm taking pictures over multiple nights, it's really important that I go back to exactly the same position, because you know, all of the images need to be lined up. Basically, I'm taking multiple exposures, either 5-minute long or 10-minute long exposures for the narrowband. And so it's important that we go back to the same position. In this particular case, I think I've done about 5 different nights with the Veil Nebula. So we go to what we call Image Link. We open that up, and I put in here one of the images that I've already acquired of the Veil, and it's going to put the image in this box here, and it's going to do what we call plate solve the image, which it's done here. And we can then close this, and you can see an overlay of the picture, one of the pictures that we acquired. And from here, what we do is we have to click on the background, and it's going to come up with this little thing, which is Image Link Photo. And what we do is we right click on it, and we select Closed Loop Slew, and the camera is going to take 2 pictures. It's going to take the first picture of where the telescope is actually pointing at the moment, and then once it's taken that picture, the SkyX will calculate where the telescope needs to move to in order for it to be lined up exactly in this position. So it takes 2 pictures. So once it's taken the 2 pictures, what I have to do then is go to focus, and I'm not going to connect it, but there's a in the camera, I use Focus Tool at Focus 3, which is a software plugin in the SkyX, which we use to focus the camera. So once we've got the focusing and ensuring that the picture is going to be nice and sharp, I then go back to Maxim, and I will take a photograph using the guide camera, which is this little box here, and then we have to calibrate where the telescope is, or where the guide camera is pointing. That takes around about a minute. It moves the star in several different directions, so that the idea of this is that once we start tracking, the little guide camera and the guide scope on the setup is going to help keep the telescope pointing in the right position, and it's going to make changes and fix any errors in the guiding. providing the seeing conditions are pretty good. So once we've got the little guide camera working and tracking, I'll then start taking some pictures. And here you can see is one of the examples. This is a 10-minute exposure of the Veil Nebula that was shot using the hydrogen alpha filter. And then I have another one here where I captured the same complex in oxygen 3. And basically what we do is we want to get as many 10-minute exposures in narrowband with O3, hydrogen alpha and sulfur. We usually aim for 15 to 20 10-minute exposures. And then we use another software called PixInsight to do what we call the pre-processing and put all the pictures together as one to equal the total exposure. And then what we do is we do some post-processing in Photoshop. This picture here is the end result of capturing the Veil Nebula late last month and early this month before the smoke hit. And this particular picture was captured using red, green and blue, hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3. And so yeah, and just going back to Maxim again, this was a picture that we shot of NGC 7000 with the camera that I had on it beforehand, which was just a one-shot color camera. And a lot of people think that you can't use a one-shot color camera for narrowband, but you can. And but anyhow, yeah. So normally, what I'd be doing if we had a public event is I would be showing capturing of these images up on our big TV screen outside, or you know, if we at least didn't have smoke, I'd be showing you some live capturing, but of course tonight that's not possible. I'm hoping that next month, when we have our next virtual event, that the smoke will be gone. However, just reading a news article that I got from Isaac a few minutes ago, and they're saying in there that looks like the fire may burn until we get some rain or snow, and that could be a couple of months at least. So we'll see. All right. So does anyone have any questions at all?
Terry, this is Brian. I have two questions for you. The first one is, how long are your exposures, your individual subframes, when you're shooting narrowband on an OSC?
Okay, this particular one, Brian, it was 15-minute long exposures, and when I was using the 367 on this setup, that's what I used for all of the narrowband channels, whether it was H alpha, O3 and S2. That seemed to work out pretty good. But you know, you have to bear in mind the telescope that you're using. This particular setup has got a fairly fast focal ratio. The the TAC 130. I'm using the native focal length, which is 650, and an F ratio of 5. So yeah, I've been pretty happy with the results that it's given us in narrowband. This particular setup using different filters on it now, but when I had the 367 on there, I was using the chroma filters, the 5 nanometer, and at the moment I'm using Optilong. That's all I could get my hands on at short notice, but I've got some chroma 5 nanometer that should be in the mail by Tuesday, Wednesday next week, hopefully, so I'll be swapping them over. I'm not real happy with the Optilong, especially in the 03. You can see in here, maybe you can't see in here, but oh yeah. Okay, if I zoom in, you'll see in 52 Cygni, which is a pretty bright star. Just move this down a bit. It's hard to see in this picture, but it's got a huge halo. And I don't get that with the chroma. Optilong have some new filters which supposedly has taken care of this halo issue, but they're very hard to get a hold of. I think I've only got one of the new Optilong 03s, and unfortunately it's not on this setup.
Thank you. So second question is, it looked like all of your cameras, all of your setups were using a separate guide scope. And
No, well, I'm actually trying to think now. At the moment, I've got a separate guide scope on the 130. I'm about to hook it up to a new Optec off-axis guider. I've actually been testing that, but there's been some issues with it. Been getting some artifacts, but I think we've got that sorted out. On the C system 2 at the moment, I've got a, which is the 150 refractors. I've got a William Optics guide scope that I've been testing. On the plane wave, we have an off-axis guider. I always recommend anything that's 1600 millimeters or longer, we use off-axis guider. And on that one, I'm using the QHY off-axis guider.
thank you.
No worries, Brian. Anyone else got any questions? Okay, so I would just like to thank everyone for joining us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you again at the next Zoom event. We'll be posting all the details on the event in September by next week. So hope you all stay safe and stay well, clear skies, and thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, so Robert, do you want to, are you still there, Robert? He's probably gone. Okay. So I think I'm going to, I don't know if I can close it. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to close the meeting. Good night, everyone.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye.
All right. See you.
Terry,
Bye.
did you
Till next time.
get my email on CMU?
Yes, I did. Yeah, thank you, Ken.
Okay.
All righty. Take care, everybody.